Get Diane.
You know, it's so very sweet of you to come, and I appreciate it so very, very much. I told Bob here, he said, what do you want to talk about? And I said, well, there's a lot of things. Now, if you want to ask me some questions to start off with.
Let's go back to Gus Edwards.
Ooh!
That really intrigued you in Gus was doing what kind of show?
Well, he was doing a show at the, think now, Ambassador Hotel. Yes, I was 11 years old. And I was doing some acrobatic work in Atlantic City, New Jersey. What happened? I come from Springfield, Massachusetts. New Englander. And the reason I got started, Bob, dancing was because nobody in the family danced. No one was in show business. I don't think anyone coming from New England ever is, really, except Katharine Hepburn. And I was very shy as a child. And you know, I read so many times that so many actors and actresses are shy to begin with. And my mother was quite concerned because even when friends came in that, you know, that I knew, I used to run and hide behind the chair. And really, that's the truth. And so someone suggested to my mother, why don't you put her in dancing school where there's children? Now, I imagine if someone said the Girl Scouts, you know, group therapy, I would never have been where I am. So we went to a little Ralph McKernan School of Dance. It was a little local school in Springfield, Mass. And it was, I remember it vividly. It was at 10 o'clock in the morning, interpretive class. And we were very poor, so $1 was an awful lot, you know, to put into a class, when my mother thought, what in the world, you know, is this going to amount to? It's like going to a fortune teller with a, you know, a glass ball and having your fortune told. Well, anyway, I lost my mind in this class. My grandmother took me because my mother worked. And my poor grandmother, you know, when her ignorance said to my mother, I didn't realize it then, but later, she said she didn't move her feet all day. All they did was arm movements, first position, second, third, fourth, and fifth. You know, and my grandmother said, this is dancing. And I just lived for that class. I just loved it. It seemed that I didn't seem to notice the mothers sitting out front or the grandmothers or whoever brought the children. And I was 11 years old and went to school.
You were also involved in some kind of athletic thing, basketball.
Oh yeah, basketball in school, and yet quite athletic, loved it, acrobatic and all that sort of thing. Then in the summer we went down to Atlantic City because my grandmother had a sister who lived there. We went to visit. And as I was saying, I was doing these walkovers and one-handed walkovers and things that kids do on the beach. And my mother had promised, you know, my mother worked down there too. She was a waitress in the Canary Tea Room, which was on the boardwalk. It was the coffee shop of the Ambassador Hotel that was right off the boardwalk. And you know, that was the days that they had the Spanish shawls, you know, over the what do you call them? No, yes, but the, I can't think. They pushed you along and, you know what I mean. On the wheels, what do you call them? No.
Anyway, they push people on.
They push people on the boardwalk. You could go in these seats and they'd push you along, and they had these Spanish, I'm going way back. So I was born in 1912. So now, today, I'm 68 years old. And I'll be 69 in November. I'm sorry. So, anyway, this man, my mother said, don't talk to any strangers. And this man walked over to me, see, and he said, my name is Gus Edwards. Well, that didn't mean anything to me. You know, I'd never even seen a show in my life. And he said, you're very good. He said, I would like to have you work in my Ambassador Hotel in my show. And when my mother came home, and I said, well, I have to talk to my mother. And he said, you bring your mother. Well, I begged my mother, you know, go and talk to him. And she said, well, I don't know. Now, my mother was, you know, panic-stricken, you know, but I teased her. And she went over and talked with me. Now, let me explain. This was not, per se, a nightclub. This would be like, like the Ambassador Hotel if they had a dinner show. Do you know what I mean? You don't consider that a nightclub, really.
Well, now, Gus has been doing shows since, my goodness, 1902 or something.
Right.
And this wasn't like his old school.
No. He had, now let me tell you who was on the bill. Leota and Lola Lane. The two sisters. Now, the other one, what's the youngest one? Priscilla wasn't even born yet. See? Leota and Lola Lane were the star team, and there was Paul Hercon. You must remember, you must have heard of Paul Hercon. Was great in the ballet, marvelous ballet dancer.
This is a kind of a kiddie show, was it?
No, a regular adult show.
Wow.
Now, so Gus Edwards hired me, and the only thing that I could do was the dance and the recital from the dancing school. That's all I knew, right? My grandmother made the costume. I have these pictures in storage, and I look older then than I do now. You know, she copied little bathing trunks of burnt orange, sewed rhinestones around the border here. The little brassiere, you know, nothing there at all, flat, you know, with the rhinestones on it. And, you know, the old-fashioned bathing hats that used to snap under the, you know, the chin, made one out of velvet with rhinestone sunburst, rhinestone anklet on my left ankle, and I did an acrobatic number to the Japanese sunset. I went into this show 3 nights a week, made $7 a night, $21, which was more than my mother was making, except the tips that she got as a waitress, you know. And so I did that all summer, you see.
Then you went back to school, right?
Then wintertime, I went back to school.
Now, somehow in the next 6 years, you got enough confidence to suddenly go to New York. That was...
Well, let me tell you, I'll try to condense this down. You don't mind if you're here to Christmas, do you, you know? No, I went back the following year, and I was doing the same thing with another routine from the recital in the wintertime. And a man, now remember, all these names meant nothing to me at the time, a man called Betty Davis come running down. You remember? He wrote Margie, da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
He was at the Silver Slipper. Now that was a big nightclub on the boardwalk, a real nightclub. He came down to Gus Edwards and he said, "My star act is sick. I need an act to fill in." So they said, "Well, take the kid." That's me. I'm the least important. Take the kid, you know. So up I go with my mother. You never had any makeup on or anything, and went up, and I remember Mrs. Davis put the first lipstick on me and a little bit of eyeshadow, you know. And I went on and did my thing, you know, which was the same thing, and they kept me there the rest of the year, the rest of that season of the summer.
Gosh.
And then there was a club across the street called Club in Time, which, now, this was before my time. The girl on the swing, white shot, what's the girl on the swing, the red swing? Evelyn Nesbit.
Nesbit, yeah.
Yes, well, this was that club. And I went over there the following summer, went back to Springfield School, and went over there and became the mistress of ceremonies, if you please.
Right.
Now I'm 13, and the people coming in like Jack Benny, Eddie Cantor, don't know who they are, you know, and they said, "You have to go to New York." But I had no tap. See, the school that I took from in Springfield taught ballet, acrobatic, interpretive, no tap, and I loathe tap. I hated tap. And when the tap dancers came into this club where I was the MC,
Yes.
I would look with disdain, you know, that awful kind of dancing, you see? So all right, so we saved up some money and we decided we were going to try the big city. Now we had enough money, Mom and I, to last 3 months by watching things very closely. And I remember we went to a restaurant on 42nd Street because they had a big basket of rolls in the middle of the table, sweet rolls, and if you ordered soup, you could eat the rolls. This is true.
Now, you were about, what, 16, 18 maybe?
No, I was 15 and a half.
Oh.
And everyone told me you ought to go to the William Morris office, the Oxford King, and I heard William Morris. So Ben Burney, you know who I mean, Ben Burney, the band leader?
Yeah.
Well, he saw me, he said, if you ever come to New York, he said, I want you to go to my club. So the first job I had in New York was in Ben Burney's nightclub. And then I walked in to the William Morris office one day, and it was on lunch hour, and that's when they had little cubicles, you know what I mean? It's not like they are today. I mean, little offices you could look in, and everybody was out, except one man there. I walked up to the girl at the reception desk, and I think back now at the naiveness. I said, my name is Eleanor Powell, and I'd like to be in a show. She looked at me, oh, you would. I don't know what to ask for, so she laughed, and she called this man over. She said, come here, you want to hear something cute? She said, repeat what you just said. And I said it, and this happened to be Billy Grady.
Oh, really?
Yes, now you see how things turn out?
My goodness. Tell now what...
Well, Billy Grady later became casting director for MGM.
See, kind of a coincidence.
After I was there a while. But, so anyway...
He was your agent then?
He became my agent right away, and I auditioned for him. And now, let me tell you, I went and auditioned in the little black bag, audition like everybody. And everywhere I went, they said, do you tap? I said, no, sir, we'll call you. Never got a call. So I said to my mother, well, I said, I better learn to tap. And so I asked someone, I can't remember this day, where can I go to learn tap? This person said, why don't you go to the Jack Donahue School of Dance? Now, Jack Donahue was the partner of Marilyn Miller, an Englishman, very good, a leading man and dancer and everything. I went up to the school, and Johnny Boyle was his assistant. And
did Donahue teach there, really?
Jack Donahue taught.
He did.
Yeah, and Johnny Boyle was his assistant. I mean, when Jack was doing a matinee, Johnny Boyle would teach, you see. And I remember I went in, and I've never seen anything like this to this day. They brought me in a room, and they had me beat out rhythms to a Victrola record. Just beat rhythms. Of course, I went in the beginner's class. Stood in the back row. Now, this is beginners. They're teaching the first step. I haven't got it. They're on to the second step. I haven't got the first step. They got the first step and the second step pitched together. I haven't got the first step. So when it was over, and it was $35 for 10 lessons. If you took 10 lessons, it was $30. That's all it ever cost me to learn how to tap dance, $35. And I had years of ballet, which I adore. But I went in the dressing room, and my mother was waiting for me with other mothers, and she had to go. I said, I just don't like it. I don't get it. Forget it. So we went back to the hotel, and the next time the class came around, I didn't go. And of course, you sign your name and your telephone number and your hotel and everything on the book when you go. And so the following day, the phone rang, and Mr. Donahue said, aren't you the new little girl? I said, yes. He said, why weren't you in class? I said, Mr. Donahue, it isn't your fault. I just don't understand it. And the class is going so far ahead. And he said, well, look, you come back, and I'll watch you carefully and see if we can figure something out. And I was mad at myself, you see. So went back, and didn't do any better. And he sat on the windowsill, and he watched and watched. So after the class was over, he took me into a private little room. At that time, for $1, you could go into this room and practice the steps you just learned, you see. We went in there, and he said, well, you're very aerial, you're very ballet, very turned up, good position. And he had gotten me, and this is the truth, a raw surplus belt that you get, with the bullets in it. And he put that around my waist, no bullets, of course, and 2 sandbags that weighed down the curtains in the theater. And man, I ain't never left the ground ever since. I mean, there I was. And he started, fundamentally just from the beginning, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and I don't know what happened to this day, I can't tell you, but at the end of the 8th lesson, I was up with Mr. Donahue demonstrating that in front of the class. It was like an algebra problem, that you can't understand, and then something breaks, and all of a sudden it's there.
It's something inside of you. I mean, because that
I don't know. I never been in a class ever since. I started making up my own.
Did you ever hear of anybody else doing the sandbag method? Is that?
Nope.
Wow.
No, he weighted me. I was just weighted down. That's why I danced so close to the ground. I guess I'm mentally carrying those sandbags with me all the time. But the funny part of it was that I had no other routine but that one, right? So when I auditioned for a show the next time around, I did that routine, and the producer, Schwab and Mandel, said, "Hey, how old are you?" I said, "Well, if you hire me and we go on the tryout on the road, I'll be 16. They said, "You got a birthday gift." So I was 16 in my first show.
Wow. And was that follow through?
That's follow through.
Well, that was a big show.
Yes, lasted a year and 8 months on Broadway.
Yeah.
But I did that routine. Now, the funny part, if any people who was in that class came to see that show, they'd see that routine up there. I didn't want to see that. I did that one routine I knew. But then, what happened, on matinee days, when everybody would go out to dinner, I would have a quick sandwich or a malted milk or hardly anything and put my rehearsal clothes on, and with the work light, on the stage and everything dark, I would go down there with my Victrola, and at that time, we didn't plug it in, You had this plug, and I had bought Fats Waller's 78 records. And I still have 12 albums of Fats Waller. To this day, I practice to those records. And I practiced with those when I was 16.
Oh, great.
And the beat that he had, fabulous.
Yeah.
And I'd rehearse and rehearse. And it took me, those taps on turns, when you get syncopated taps going around, you see they have to be done. You can't move this leg too much because you're off balance on your turn. So you have to learn to do it from the ankle down, like that. Just that foot like that. It took me 3 years to perfect that one thing, that one turn. And I would knock my brains out. They'd call half hour, go upstairs, take a quick shower, put the makeup on, and that night I would not give as good a show for the public where you're supposed to. But I felt great because I found something I could do during rehearsal, And it was just one constant rehearsing after the other.
I understand you generally did your own routines.
All my own choreography. Never had
all
anyone.
the time.
Everything, for films, for stage. Nobody's ever put a routine on except that first one that I learned from Mr.
Oh, that's
My own choreography. That was the strange thing when Mr. Stair and I got together.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayer said to me, "How would you like to make a picture with Fred Astaire?" And I said, "Well, you have to be kidding," because I knew he was at RKO. And I had many opportunities to meet Mr. Astaire back there when I was doing shows. Al Jolson wanted to introduce me, and Fanny Bryce, people like that, just dropping a few names. And like I said to Bob earlier this evening, I said, my problem is that everyone is so young, these film buffs, they don't know what I'm talking about. And I said, the older people have their hearing aids in and they can't hear me. So I have nobody to talk to. I go back, I worked with Burt Lahr and Harry Richmond, and was in Hot Shot with...
What your big show was George White Scandals. Who was in the, that was Hot Shot was a Ziegfeld show, right?
Ziegfeld show, yes.
Was W.C. Fields in that?
No. Burt Lahr, Lupe Perez. He's an awful. Charlie, Mary Pickford's husband.
Rogers.
Yeah.
Buddy
Rogers.
Yeah.
And they had two terrific ballroom teams. Philos and Yolanda on one side of the stage in the spotlight, and Tony and Renee DeMarco over here, dancing at the same time, the slow and the fast. Oh, what a show. It was fabulous.
Great.
Just fabulous.
Then George White scandal. So what did you do in the scandal?
You mean on the stage?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, on the stage.
You don't mean the one out here?
No.
No, everything. One time I came out of a monkey's paw, like King Kong, and they let me down, and I did a number, with that, and then I was in Fine and Dandy with Dave Chasen, when Dave Chasen was the stooge for Joe Cook. Joe Cook, Fine and Dandy. That lasted a year on Broadway. And when I think back, so many people say, don't you get lonely now? Lonely, there's so many. I'm busier now than I was when I was working because I don't know what it is, but all these film buff things have come up. About 8 years ago, it started for me. My friend who's with me today, Eleanor Davis, my dear friend, who just happens to be business manager for Dean Martin and Jimmy Stewart and a lot of other people. She said she came running into my apartment. This is 8 years ago, and she said, there's 2 pictures of yours going at the Gary Theater, a little teeny theater over on Santa Monica. And I hadn't seen the pictures since they were made, And I said, oh, golly, let's go one night. That'd be fun. So we go over to this little Gary Theater. It's not there any longer. I think it burned down. They rebuilt it, and it's something else now. A porno thing, I guess. I don't know, probably. Yeah. Anyway, we went in, and there were only 70 seats in the place, and the man was projecting on a king-size sheet, not a screen. And I got in a seat in the back row. It was broken, so we're sitting like this all night, and then I come on, I'm looking at myself. It's strange. It's strange to watch yourself and hear people around you who don't know who you are with the gray hair, talking, And all young kids from UCLA, and I don't know. And so when in between the pictures, we went out to get some popcorn. And to see the other one was Melody at 36 and Born to Dance. So this man walks over to me with gray hair, and he said, looks at me like this, aren't you Eleanor Powell? And I said, oh, no, I'm mistaking for her often, but no. And he said, wait a minute now, that smile, I don't know what it is about my smile, I just smile, but... and so my girlfriend said, that's her. So he said, oh, you've got to come back one night and let me introduce. I said, look, they're all young kids. They probably came in here and don't know what they're seeing and are bored stiff. And my friend kept after me to go, so we went over one Friday night. And I tell you, this man became the Saul Hurok of Santa Monica Theater. He had on a spotlight from the wall, he had a long mic, he had a chair with red velvet, and he came down and introduced me, and it was so adorable because all those young children stood up, and I was able to tell them behind-the-scene things that had happened. But there's one cute thing that I would like to share with you. The girls, you see, in the front rows there said, did you really know Clark Gable? And...
did you?
Yeah. And I said, so, I kind of dragged it out. I said, now, you know what? Would you like to hear a story about Clark Gable? They said, yeah. Okay. I said, I had a birthday. I had many birthdays at MGM, and on this particular birthday, I said they gave me the crew and the gaffers and the electricians, and everybody chipped in and got me a lovely present. It was a birthday cake and everything. And at lunchtime, I went up to my dressing room to have lunch, and a knock came at the door, and there was Clark standing there. He said, Ellie, I've got a gift for you. I said, well, Clark, my heavens, you didn't have to do that. And he said, no, but you've got to be blindfolded. I said, okay. He blindfolded me, and he walked me down the 4 steps and down 4 more steps, and then we're on the pavement, and I'm trying to figure where I am, what sound stage I'm close to. And he twirled me around, and he kept walking me and twirling me and walking me, and I didn't know where I was. Finally, I heard a lot of tittering and a lot of laughter and noise. He said, you can take the blindfold off. I took it off, And the girls are like leaning forward. I said, and what do you think my gift was? Now I've got these girls like I said, a Packard Roadster automobile. Wow. I said, now I'll have to update that. That would be like a Mercedes today, I guess. Yeah. You know? And I said, with a great pink ribbon. And I said, Clark, what in the world? He said, well, honey, I know you ride a bicycle from soundstage to soundstage. You see, back there in the years that I was there, you were not allowed to drive your car on the lot. You had to park in the garage. The only cars driven on the lot were the studio drive-in cars that took you down to the set, the limousines. So he said, but I've seen you going on the bicycle, you know, from this soundstage to that, and I thought you ought to, of course, he said, if you want to drive it off the lot, that's up to you, you know. Then I looked down at the girls and I said, you know what? I only had to dance, honey, that's all.
I would like to invite you all, please, to ask questions after I ask
anybody
them.
wants to ask questions?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. I'm fascinated by the skin you're wearing.
Oh, yeah? Yes.
Yes, and I'd like to know about that. And also, how did you communicate the choreography to the musicians?
How did I communicate the choreography to the musicians?
Yeah.
No, I would, well, you see, let me explain. I don't, probably you know this, and if you do, stop me. But you know, every routine on the film, on the screen, has to be done 4 times. Now, I'll answer your question. Eventually. You have to make up the number, create the number. And the only thing you have for inspiration is a sheet of music on a piano with a piano player, with a pianist, in a rehearsal hall. And from this, you create the number. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, you go into the sound room where there's 50 or 60 musicians. And they put down a mattress, like we have acrobats about that thick on the floor, and in ballet slippers, although you're doing a tap dance, you go over and over for the music. Now, the reason you have to be there to do it is because the conductor, although he's watched you, the conductor of the orchestra, he can't remember all the various different tempos, and there's so many changes of tempos in the number. So you sort of more or less have to almost lead him, you know, like this, you know, with tempo. And I have never been in that room less than 16 hours at a whack, because it's over and over. Now, maybe on the 3rd take, a trumpet will blow a blue note, let's say, and the guy up in the glass cage up there is listening for music. Well, that has to be done.
Pardon me, Eleanor. Somebody in the meantime has made an orchestration to your...
Oh, yes. They've come down on the set, and they've watched the number, the arranger, and he's watched the number 3 or 4 times.
Pardon me, let's back up for a minute.
Yeah.
Who decides that you're going to have 93 drums or a battleship?
I do.
You do?
I dream up the ideas.
Now, that was...
And I'm stuck with them after I think of them.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you that rope number, I didn't answer. Let me answer her question.
Yeah.
It takes a long time because it comes in stages.
Yeah.
I don't want to be long-winded, but I don't know how to do it any other way. All right, then you do the number, then the arrangers come down and they watch and watch.
And then they make an orchestration.
Yes, because they see the accents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They see the accents.
This is in a rehearsal hall.
Yeah, in a rehearsal hall in your rehearsal clothes.
Yeah. Somebody has picked the song.
Yes.
And
you're given the song by the songwriters.
Yes. And then you figure out
the number and the props and everything.
Yeah.
And you more or less work with the set designer. Now, Merrill Pye happened to be the set designer on all the pictures that I did. And you more or less, when I say more or less, I'll say to Merrill Pye, because we worked Now, remember when I was at the studio, we shot all day Saturdays. There were no Saturdays off.
Yeah.
And every Sunday I was over there because Mr. Mayer had all his relatives and his friends, and I was on for Mr. Mayer's relatives. I never had a day off. They used to call me the Iron Woman because I was, had so much strength and fortitude, because I didn't know anything else. I just knew one thing, dance. I didn't know anything else.
Okay, suppose
all right.
you've now decided you're going to do it on the drums, and you've worked out very carefully,
Yes.
must
Yes.
be
Yeah, right.
very precisely.
Right?
The
And then you go in with the
dimensions of
musicians, right?
First
And
you
they're
go to-
making a record, a playback, right? They're making a
Yeah.
record of just music.
Uh-huh.
And I had to learn, when I first started, I didn't get wise, but I had to learn, like, let's say that take 4 would be perfect tempo-wise for me. But take 6, let's say, was better musically.
Oh.
Because the music men they don't care about that. They're only listening. Now the audience out there, when you're looking at something going on like dancing, you're not just listening to the music, you know?
Yeah.
And if I'm out of tempo, it's bad for me. So I got very sharp. I got a little black book, and I put down number 4, excellent. Number 5, there.
Yeah.
You know, I made this little thing, and then I would say what I wanted. And then when we get down in the set, when it was time to put it on, I'd check and see what they had there.
Uh-huh.
You see what I mean? I said, where's the 4 that I have for? And they had to go get the 4, you know.
I just figured out why you had the mattress, because they're recording.
Yes!
Oh.
You see, no sound can be picked up from my
Yeah.
feet. They're making just music. Just
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
But the reason I'm there, Bob, is for the change of tempo.
Yeah.
I mean, how is that conductor going to know?
Yeah.
Now, the most difficult of all,
Yeah.
the day you go down on the set to film the number. Now remember, it's been okayed, it's been orchestrated, they have the music, and you get down there, and it's done silently. No taps picked up at all. Because when the whole movie is over, and they're scoring the whole picture for dark, then you go back into this room and where the musicians were. It's empty now, and on the floor there's a large maple, because maple is the best wood for sound, mat inlaid on the floor that Mr. Mayer had built there, and they used to have a zippered up canvas thing when it wasn't in use. And little microphones all around that mat.
Wow.
About 12 inches apart, all over. Now you watch yourself on the 35 millimeter film, just what you saw up there, like audio sound, and with these earphones on, very low as possible, so it won't leak into there. You watch yourself, and you put the taps in there, alone.
Wow.
So the taps, so whenever you go and see that kind of dancing on the screen, whether it be Donald O'Connor, Fred Astaire, Ann Miller, whoever, just visualize that the sound you're listening to is never done at the time of the photography. Everything's on a separate track. The photography separate, the music separate, and the taps. That's why when they used to go to previews before it would open in theater, and the sound man would be there. Now it stands to reason, if I'm way back on the stage, and I come tapping towards you, it's going to get a little louder. You could bring that up and set. If I go back away from you, it's going to recede back. And then they set the sound that way, you know, which enhances the number. But the hardest part is going back, because every picture took 3 months to make. And you have to remember all that up in your head. All those little intricate cube things and all, you know?
Wow.
And that's hard.
You must have run into times when, now you go onto the set now, and the set isn't exactly the height of the riser, or
Yeah,
the distance
right.
isn't exactly, or I know that the camera work with dollying and the booms and all that stuff, that's terribly complicated.
Yeah.
And that...
Wait, you know, Bob, on the drum dance that you saw in Rosalie, everyone forgot entirely that it was going to be shot out on the 3rd lot at night in the open air. Now, when we got out there, the damp dew had settled on those drums. And when I got up there to go through camera, you know, to rehearse a tape for camera, not filming, you know, no film, I was Sonia Haney out there. I mean, I was skating. I said, well, I can't do this. I can't jump and turn down these things. So they had to go, and they had to stop, and they had to go back to the main prop room, back, you know, a long way, because incidentally, that number was done on 60 acres of ground. And we had 27 cameras on that number. Remember, this in 1939. And that was more cameras that was used on Ben-Hur in the chariot race. 2,000 extras on the set.
Incredible.
You know, they couldn't, it was the most expensive number ever done at Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer.
I love the line with, it was Frank Morgan, isn't it?
Yes.
And he says, oh, look.
Yes.
And then you got, you know, if that wouldn't have attracted anybody's attention, it was like you
Well, they
saw a
put, you know what they
butterfly.
did? They went and got that corking material. You know that, like corking, well, I guess some kitchens have it. You know, corking, if you, next time you should look at it, about 1.5 inches from the end of the drum, you'll see this little cork. They put cork around there, you know, so I, like that. What's that,
Yeah.
a rug? Well, no, like corking.
Yeah.
And Nelson Eddy and Ray Bolger for a gag, because I'm way up high on that first drum.
Yeah.
They were down there, and they had an ambulance, and they had a doctor and a nurse, you know, laid up, and they said, Ellie, if you fall, we're all prepared for you down here, you know. And once I almost did. I see myself where it is. You know, when I look at that now today, I'm like this, and you know, I look at it.
Another question?
Did I answer you right or not? Well, the pin was given to me, made up and given to me for my birthday, this last birthday that I had. From Tiffany's.
Second.
A girlfriend, too.
I'll sit
Yeah.
on the second row, yes.
Yes.
Could you stand so we could all hear
Yeah.
you, please?
Yes, I was able to tell that, of course, you had ballet in the way you were bending your head, the way you would leap your feet together when you leaped up into the air and so on. So that part you have already answered.
Yeah.
But the thing that I want to know, how could you turn around so fast? It's just like a skater. You did that incredibly.
Well, you see, that's where the ballet comes in handy. Because in tap class, as anyone knows, whatever tap class you may go to, they do not teach you to turn, you see. And in ballet, you learn how to do the fortes, you know, that thing with the leg coming out. You learn how to do rambouillet turns. You learn how to do a line of chenets. That's spins with 2 toes together. Débelays is with 1 together. You learn all kinds of turns in ballet class. And that's why Mr. Donahue said to me, you know, it'd be wonderful if you could put the 2 together. Do the tap, but then don't do it so classical that it's, you know, you're going into something real classical. Keep it, but utilize your ballet work. And that's what I did. Then I tried to think of, you know, doing the taps on turn. Wouldn't it be great to turn and get some taps as you go around, you know? And
You also did something that I always feel is so important in dancing. You kept your knees bent.
bent?
Yeah. And you were able to do a lot more.
Right. Well, you got the heel and toe that way, you see? It's all heel and toe. Everything is really from the ankles down. But did I answer you, Barry? But I have to tell you something I think is kind of cute, and it's more recent than these things you've just seen. When Matt's Entertainment came out, Entertainment #1, MGM wanted to send over a limousine, not just for me, for everybody who was in it, and, you know, have your hair done and everything for the premiere. And I chickened out. I said, no, I really don't want to go, thank you. So I didn't go. And I think it was playing about a month or 5 weeks up at the Beverly Theater. And I live on Roxbury Drive in Beverly Hills, and the theater is very close on Beverly, Roxbury to Beverly. So my girlfriend said one day, oh, let's go see that. And you see, I didn't really want to see what I was doing, had no idea what I was doing in it. But the thing is, when you're making films, you don't see other films. How can you go see films when you're shooting? It's like in New York, if someone's in a show, and that same show has a Wednesday matinee and a show every night, how can you, unless the show has a Thursday matinee, there's no way you can see another show. I said, I've never seen Esther Williams and everything. I've never seen Judy and all her things. I'd love to go and see it. So I said, let's walk. So we walked. And I said, let's go to the last show, the 9:15 or whatever. Maybe it'll be more exciting then. So we did, and we were behind the red ropes, you know, and see, nobody knows, because with the gray hair, nobody knows we're there. And so they came out, you know, and we went in and we sat down and about the third row from the back, and I sat on the aisle, and the overture was playing, the lights were up, and everybody was coming in and being seated, and this man sat right behind me with his wife, I guess was his wife, and he said in a very loud voice, "Well, I'm here for just one reason, to see Eleanor Powell." And with that, I started to slink down in the seat, and he said, "You know, I was so in love with her when I was in the Navy." He said, "I had her picture on my locker," and he's going, I said, "What a beautiful pair of gams she had." And I'm sinking lower and lower in the chair, and my girlfriend was nudging me like this, you know, and suddenly the lights go down, and on comes the show, and when I came on, he bristled, you know, through his... he like this, you know, and he prodded and went wild. And when the whole thing was over, I said to my friend, and let everybody walk out, you know, and all the young kids, they want to get out, and I think we were, and he remained too, and this is what he said. Well, he said, "I don't know. I'm still in love with her. I wonder what the hell she's doing today." And my girlfriend, she had her hand like this, see, to go back, and I grabbed her and I said, "Let him live with his illusion." They don't think we're two hookers, do they? And I said to them, "Look, sir, you won't believe this, but I was over here at the Beverly Theater and I did a few tap steps, you know, and I didn't have my identification on me, and he cruised all the way along the curb home and escorted us home." So I thought that was so funny. Don't you think that's funny? Yes. Do we have any USC students here tonight? Are any of you from SC out there? Yes? Who? Really? Oh, great. My son graduated from that college, and my daughter-in-law graduated from the college, and I have a 4-year-old grandson who I'm sure is going to SC when he gets older. And I gave all my classical library of records to SC, donated them, so I'm very fond of SC. Yes, sir.
Miss Powell?
Yes.
Were you the idea for the Cape Crusader? I noticed that you had a cape on at 3 different occasions. You must love wearing a cape.
Yes. Well, you see, I wore that in my act, too. When I did an act in 61 to 64, I wore the black cape again. It was sort of like a trademark, let's say. Yeah.
Another thing, when all those sousaphones were blowing in your ears, you came down the deck of the battleship, didn't that hurt your hearing?
No. No, it didn't.
They're not really playing.
I tell you, I don't think anybody in the world loved to dance, really love it the way I did. I mean, I really loved it. I mean, it was everything to me. My mother often used to say, I had a birthday, and we lived, at that time we lived in a house, we rented a house on 727 North Bedford Drive, and we were there, rented it all through the time I was at Metro, and it was twin beds. It was with furniture, and the twin bed was fine. I had a birthday. My mother gave me a double bed for my birthday. Now, would you believe you would think someone would notice if they were in a double bed for the twin bed? I didn't even know. I was so gone with, in what I was doing over at Metro. About 2 weeks later, I said to Mother, "Oh, this bed is lovely." She said, "You really did not know anything but just dance." Creating your own numbers, and you see, once the public knows that you can dance, after all, it took about 2 pictures and the public knew, all right, so she dances. I became the Janet Gaynor, of musical comedy, coming in with a little bag, auditioning, and then she's going to make it big at the end. I said to Mr. Mayor, couldn't I be rich at the beginning and end in the poorhouse? Or, let's go the other way. But I just loved it. Just when I danced, when I was rehearsing, it was like going to the biggest party in the world because it was something you loved. Now, when Mr. Stair and I were rehearsing for Melody of 40, Mr. Mayor came to me and said, would you like to make a picture with Mr. Stair? And I said, oh, well. And he said, well, we've sent him the script. He loves the script. The money is okay. There's only one thing. You may be too tall for him. He said, will you be in Mr. Mervyn Leroy's office tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock? I was making a picture at the time. So I said to Mr. Mayor, when I was so naive, really, it was funny. I said, well, I'm making a picture, He said, look, I pull the strings in the studio, and if I tell you to be there at 10 o'clock, you'll be there. So I got there about 9:15, and I was talking to Mr. Mervyn Leroy, and I said, I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Stair, as I started to tell you before, in New York, but I never wanted to meet him at a social gathering. I wanted to meet him where I could talk, well, let's say Hooper's language, what do you wear on the bottom of your shoes, that sort of thing, And I didn't think it was nice to do that if you met him socially somewhere. So that's why. So I was talking to Mr. Leroy, and I said how nervous I was. I said, I even took a bath in Lux, thinking I might shrink a little bit. And I said, I hear he's a perfectionist, of course, I think every dancer on film owes Mr. Stair a debt of gratitude because he was the first one to bring dancing prominently to the screen. And through Mr. Stair making those films at RKO, Metro started to say they were looking for a female Fred Astaire, and through Mr. Stair's work, ironically, that's why I came into the picture, or they never would have thought about it. They wanted someone to be competition, let's say. Here's RKO with that kind of a musical. Now, Metro, of course, had never done a musical except Broadway Melody 1929, but they were noted for their beautiful epics of their Norma Shearer and Nelson Eddy and Jeanette MacDonald and beautiful costume pictures, but they really weren't up on musical pictures, films. So, of course, Mr. Mayer said he was going to make the biggest and the best naturally of all of them. So, I was talking to Mervyn, and all of a sudden, the intercom rang, and Leland Hayward, who was then the agent for Mr. Stair, was out in the outer office, and he said, we're here. Now, to this day, I cannot tell you why I did this. But Merv says to me, Ellie, quick, go hide behind the door. Now, why wouldn't I say why? And because I was so nervous, I went and hid behind the door in the office. And in walks Mr. Stair, you see, with this jaunty little walk, and he sits down, and they have this chit-chat about the weather and the horse racing, and he was going over to see his sister Adele, who then was just engaged to Lord Cavendish, was going to be married, and it was this nice company talk, And then all of a sudden, Mr. Stair said, boy, he said, I hear she rehearses long hours. I hear she's practically what I said, see? And he said, gee, he said, I only hope she's not too tall. And very complimentary things. And with that, Mervyn said, Ellie, come on out. And I slunk out and sat in that chair with red as a beet. I was so embarrassed. Later he said to me, what was that all about? And we went on talking, and then one by one the executives came and stood behind Mr. Mervyn Leroy's desk, one by one. And then the moment of truth came, would you please rise, And back to back, I had my fingers crossed, we stood, and I'm 5'6", and Mr. Stair's 5'9", so it was okay, you see? Just, that much. Now, we sit there, and Mr. Cole Porter comes in, whom we both knew very well. And Cole comes in, he said, well, he said, I haven't written the score entirely yet, but I have Begin the Beguine. And he goes to the piano and he plays Begin the Beguine. Hands a sheet to me, hands the sheet with his own handwriting, and would you believe, see, little did we ever dream, because I've talked to Fred recently, I see him quite often, all that stuff we threw away. Can you imagine the lead sheet written by Cole Porter, what that would do today to these people who collect these posters and all that? We threw it away. I had all of those beautiful sets, all in color, thrown away, all the music thrown out. Well, who would ever believe in 1940 that in 1980 people would want these things, you know? So Mr. Stair looked at me and he said, he's very polite, you know, and very, oh, what a gentleman. He said, what time would you like to rehearse? And I said, any time you like, you know. And he said, no. And, well, it was so funny. I went back and forth, and nobody seemed to say anything. And I said, well, how about 8:30? Is that all right? He said, fine. Now, he was going to London to see his sister for 6 weeks, and I was making a picture, as I said. All right, so I said to Mr. Stair, I know that it's very important you have your own pianist, because you know, you're like one with your piano player. I mean, you groove together. And I thought, well, he's new on the lot here, and he'd be more comfortable. And he said, oh, that's very kind of you. Fine. So we made a date at 8:30 on such and such a date. At each gate, I would meet him, escort him down. And Mr. Mayer had built me a beautiful bungalow called the Eleanor Powell bungalow, which was really a rehearsal hall. Because when I first went there, the first two pictures that I made, they didn't have a rehearsal hall anywhere, and I had to rehearse on a sound stage. And I just get rehearsing with I have my own prop man. They gave me my own individual prop man for props. And I get rehearsing, you'd get creating, you know, and then it would be like, say, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and somebody's coming in and use that stage to film, and I'd have to pick up all my gear and go somewhere else. I had to check with another sound stage. So finally they did build me this bungalow, which was lovely. It had a maple floor, all mirrors, and a bar around, and a dressing room and a shower on that side, dressing room and shower, and the little office in the front. So as I say, we met that day, and we're going down, you know, walking down to the bungalow and talking about his trip and his visit with his sister and all, and finally we got in there, and I said, well, your dressing room is there, Mr. Stair, mine is over here, I'll change and meet you. And he came out with this, you know, necktie tied around his pants like he does, and I had told him on the walk down, I said, unfortunately, I'm so sorry to tell you, but we are not able to have your pianist here because it had something to do with the union. The union at MGM would not let a piano player from the union of RKO, it's something to do with union. So we had to use my man, which was very good, and I introduced him, told him how sorry I was. And there were 2 canvas chairs there, you see, and we sat down. Now, he says to me, and the reason this was so odd is, I'm my own choreographer, and I am the first person that Fred Astaire has ever worked with that choreographed their own routines. Up until me, he was able to tell everybody else what to do. In fact, Hermes Pam, who he works very closely with, used to teach Ginger. Hermes and Fred would work together, and Hermes would be Ginger Rogers. Fred Astaire would be Fred Astaire, and then when they get the routine down, Hermes would go and teach Ginger while Fred was doing dialogue scenes over here, and then when she got the routine, which is over and over at the beginning, naturally, then they would get together and brush it up and, you know, tighten it up and everything. So here we sat. Now, I'm not about to tell him what to do, right? And he told me later, I'm not about to tell you. So here we sit. And the executives upstairs, they've got two champion heavyweight fighters here. And what's going to happen? Great things are coming out of this. And we're sitting, and he said to me, I'll give you just an impression. Would you like to hear Begin the Beginning? Oh, yes, very much. So Walter plays Begin the Beginning. When he finishes, he says to me, would you like to hear it again? I want you to know we sat there a half hour listening to Begin the Beginning. And nobody made a move. And finally, I'm thinking, oh, no. So I thought, I said, oh, Mr. Stair. And it was Mr. Stair and Miss Powell for about 2 weeks. It was not Fred and Ellie, like two whoopers or two tap dance. It was Miss Powell and Mr. Stair. And I said, I have a routine, Mr. Stair, that something's wrong with the middle of it. I can't put my finger on. If I did it for you, would you please help me with it? I thought maybe he'll get up on his feet, we'll get on the floor, get started. So I said, Walter, let's go through so-and-so. And I get up there, and I said, right here, you see, he jumps off the chair, he comes over, he said, well, now you know what I think, and he starts to do a little thing, and he said, oh, and he slides back and sits on the chair again. See, he realized he was on his feet. And I said, look, we've got so many numbers to do together. I don't know what we're going to do. I said, I've got an idea that meets with your approval. I'll go over in that corner, you go over here, and let Walter play 60 bars of Begin the Beginning, and we'll just doodle around, that's fool around. And if you see something you like, stop me. I'll try to find what it is, and vice versa. And maybe that way we can meddle things in together. So that's what we did. And the first day, nothing much happened. It was, I guess we were too awestruck with each other. I mean, I was of him, but I never thought he felt that way about me. And the second day, we started at 8:30 in the morning, right? And all of a sudden, my tummy made, one of those horrible growling sounds. When you get so embarrassed, when you have to hit your tummy. And I thought, oh. And I said, oh, I beg your pardon. Walter, here was Walter at the piano. He had the largest cigarette ashtray you've seen, full of butts. It was 4 in the afternoon. We had not even realized that this poor fellow at the piano, I mean, he's interested, but he's not like us, two nuts out there. We were like two scientists that were finding a cure for cancer. Should it be an afterbeat? Should it be on the beat? I mean, the average audience isn't going to really care that much. We were from 8:30 to 4 going on. So we went out and we bought a big Ben dollar alarm clock. I think it was $1.50. And we set it at 1 o'clock. And we said, no matter where we are, we're going to stop to allow this poor man to get some food. And that's that about...
if I might ask,
about a week
I had
after
understood, didn't you generally plot out a dance before you got onto the rehearsal stage? I understood that Fred, Mr. Astaire,
yes,
worked
well,
that way.
I'm so used to saying Mr. Astaire. Yeah, we would plot it out. Particularly if there were props, we'd plot it. Yeah. But you didn't plot so much if it was just like the Beguine dance, yes, but, oh dear. Ellie, help me with the name, gazebo, what is it? Jukebox.
Oh, yeah.
The jukebox number, there was no plan except the guy that put the coin in the thing and all like that,
So those dances you worked out between the two?
Between the two of us. Sure. Oh, well, we got, I would dream up these things and we stuck with them, I'd sit around with when we'd have the script reading. And probably the only other woman would be like the script girl and myself. Everyone else is a man, the director, the cameraman, the assistant. And then they'd say, Ellie and I said, well, the audience knows that you dance after a couple of pictures. But it's like writing a bestseller. How do you top it, you see? Now, so like Fred, he danced on the ceiling. He danced with a broom. You dance with flying shoes. You dance on a ledge. You know what I mean? You dance, but you have to have a gimmick pretty soon to make it different. So I suggested doing this rope number. And I will say Metro was marvelous. They got the best for me. They got a man called Sam Garrett, who was the champion rodeo rider and rope champion. And I didn't think it was going to be that tough. But I have to tell you something. That hondo, there's an iron thing that comes in the rope, is very heavy. And learning how to, now, first of all, when you get the rope up like that in speed, it's about 50 miles an hour, and you have to have a very strong, your arm develops because you got to pull that straight across like that. I started to drop, and the thing hit me on the head, and I don't know how many days I was knocked out for 5 days. I finally had to rehearse that number in football pads and a football helmet because I would hit, I would shy away from the thing. Well, naturally, I got it. But Sam got so interested in me, he forgot everything that I was in the field. He said, "You've got to go on the rodeo circuit. You've got to go, you've got to go on the rodeo circuit with me. Forget the movie, And he was my teacher. He was the one on the right. I wasn't able to tell you when you saw it. But that is hard to do, that stuff. And I got an arm. I want to tell you, I got a right arm, especially in here, that Adrian, who did the clothes, had to take every one of my dialogue dresses, make another sleeve, because, honey, I had an arm on me. I could, uppercut anybody. Because, you see what I mean? That constant thing like that. 6 weeks we worked on that number, and that whole number was shot in one take. And the crew had cigar boxes, and they were taking really big bets, like $50, $100, that I wouldn't make it on the one take. We did, the first time, we had about 3 times I couldn't lasso. I got so good with that lasso, I could lasso anybody who came in that sound stage. I had more fun, I was lassoing everybody. I said, well, I've got to practice.
See, I just can't resist. We have with us in the rear the original trick rope man, Mr. Will Ahern, and Gladys.
Oh!
And Gladys danced while Will twirled the rope. And Foster, please.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
I had a lady knew that I was young and told Dr. I could do it. But I got another story.
Yeah? What?
It took me 2 years to learn it.
Right.
And I wore a big white Stetson hat because I got hit so many times.
Did you? And I blacked out a couple of times. I
got knocked out the rope was involved.
Right. Right.
Well, think about it. I think my teeth are gone.
That's right. Thank you. I don't know if any of you saw Lady Be Good or not, but I did a dance with the dog. I thought, well, it was a little throwaway dance, the number you do in your apartment, not a big production number. And so instead of just doing it alone, I thought it would be nice. So I auditioned dogs for 3 days, see? And I was looking for they could sit up and, nothing. They didn't have the personality. So the prop man, not my prop man, but the prop man on the picture, had a little girl who had a dog, and he said, let me bring it in. And it was named Buttons, and it was a little terrier, and it had these green eyes and full of pep. Well, now I'd never trained a dog before like this, but I thought, well, I'd have to do something. So I took it home with me, and I fed it, and it slept on the bed with me, and then I'd go back in the rehearsal hall, put a little rope loosely around its neck, drag it around my body, and its paws were out, give it something. And I don't know if you saw it, but I really trained the dog to dance with me. And that dog was a ham. He just loved to be on. And the arranger came down, and he leaped. Well, I had these harem pajamas on. They're coming back now. Those full pajamas tied at the ankle. And it was very hard for Buttons because I would do a tap step, and he'd go in and out of my leg. But he also had to go through those pajamas like a curtain. And he was marvelous. The funny part of the whole thing was that the prop man, after that picture, gave up being a prop man, joined the Animals Union, and Buttons became a very famous star in motion pictures. He was with Bing Crosby. What was the name of that picture that Bing Crosby did? Do you know, Ellie? What was the name of Bing Crosby's picture where Buttons was in? Something Waltz. The Emperor Waltz. Right, thank you. And Buttons was in that, and Buttons got to be a star. So, you see, I started Buttons on the road today.
Gee, the time is...
I know.
Keep you here.
Too bad I don't.
There are some... I just want you to comment a couple of times.
Yes,
We've had some marvelous guests this time. I noticed that Foster Johnson came in, who was here last week. Isn't he here? He was here. He's there. And John Bubbles was here.
Not tonight.
No. John was here.
John.
Yeah.
I worked with John, you know.
I wonder if you might just say a couple of words about John.
John?
I heard today John Hammond, who was the jazz authority. He was interviewed by Dick Cavett. He's on tonight at 11 o'clock. It's very interesting. And he said he thinks John Bubbles was the greatest.
John Bubbles. How I adore that man. We played the Paramount Theater so many times. Fantastic performer. And I adore the way he sings. When he sings, it ain't necessarily so. Oh. And when you know what we did when we played the Paramount, though? It was embarrassing. We'd go down, Buck, at the piano. We'd finish our, they did their act, and I did my act.
When was this?
Oh, Lord of Massa, 1928, something like that, way back. And, but we go down after the show, 5 shows, with a movie and the newsreel and the cartoon. We go down the basement, and we jam around and noodle around right up to the next show time. And then when we do the show, I'm in the wings watching him on my tummy, just as far as I can get. And instead of playing to the audience, which you're supposed to do, he's turning right around and dancing to me, doing some new steps, get this one, and I'm on my tummy in the wings. And when I was on, he was in the wings watching me.
Now, was this before you did the Broadway shows, or in between?
In between. So I did the show, and then I would go and do 5 a day. And I played, I told you Radio City Music Hall, 9 shows a day.
Did you tour? Did you go out?
Oh, I went on the road with the shows. I did the low circuit, I don't know how many times. Detroit, Cleveland, 5 shows a day. And like a nut, when the movie was on, at that time, they used to have a show, newsreel, and a Bugs Bunny or something like that, And I'd be behind the screen, now here's the films on, and not tapping, of course, but doing acrobatic or limbering. I was always rehearsing, honey. That's why today I like to go around in a burlap bag, because I was always on.
The other person I wanted to ask you about, and I know you were responsible for a very interesting segment of his career, that's Willie Covan.
Oh, yes.
You brought him
I brought him to Metro to teach tap. They had singing, and they had classical, tutoring for Catherine Grayson and people like that, coaches, I would say. But they had no one they had ballet, but they had no one for tap. So I brought Willie over, and he taught tap over there.
He will be here for the last session.
Yeah, he's a lovely, dear person.
Yes, he is. I will see him tomorrow.
Of course, I worked with Bill Robinson,
Oh, did you?
Oh, yes. Bill was called the King, and there's a very interesting thing, Bob, about Bill and myself. They called him King and they called me Queen, and, back in those days, black person was not allowed to be on the stage with a white person unless they were in a subservient form or another. which was disgusting. But anyway, so Bill and I, he'd wear long tails, regular tails, and I'd wear short with the tails, and we got up a couple of routines together. And see, Bill taught me his stair dance that I did in the picture. And Shirley Temple and myself are the only two people that he ever taught his real stair dance to. He said, Ellie, I want you to have it so when I'm gone, you will have my original stair dance. And I do that in blackface in Honolulu, the picture. You haven't seen it, but it shows me putting blackface on, and I do it in the picture. But anyway, we do these private, that was just starting, and Bill and I would do these private parties on Fifth Avenue. We'd get like $500 a piece for the one night. Now, they would not allow, now Mr. Robinson is a big star. They would not allow, these people would not allow him to go up in the front elevator. He would have to use the service elevator. So I would go up in the service elevator with Mr. Robinson. We get upstairs, we do our, when we came on, much applause and Mr. Robinson and everything. We'd be in the butler's pantry afterwards, perspiring, and someone would come over and say, Miss Powell, would you like a drink of water? And I would say yes, if Mr. Robinson could have one also. And they would give Mr. Robinson a drink. And the first time that Bill did this, I was aghast. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. He drank from the glass. He went over, and in the butler's pantry, there's usually a little sink there. He'd break the glass, then he'd pay for the glass. And invariably, it was a crystal glass, because this was on Fifth Avenue for these very, the Vanderbilts and people like that. But, and today, and then I had another situation like that and at home abroad with Beatrice Lilly and Ethel Waters. Ethel Waters was a big star. Just returned from Paris, came over, I think, on the Queen Elizabeth or something, and was big star. And Howard Dietz and Arthur Swartz, who put the show on, thought, wouldn't it be great if we could get Ethel Waters to sing and Ellie to dance? Because here I was in the picture, and here was two people, a combo. But how were they going to ask Ethel Waters? I mean, she might get very say, well, if that's the way you feel, because she would have to be subservient, as I say, either a maid or what. Isn't that awful when you think, now today, how it's all changing for the better. So somebody, I don't know, Howard Dietz thought he'd go, and he went to her and said, would you consider doing it? And she was divided. She said, I would be absolutely divided. I adore this girl. We were close friends. She had to wear a little apron. She had to wear a maid's cap on her head. And we were in a dressing room scene and a revolving stage, with dialogue, and I'm getting ready to go on, and she's my maid. The stage revolves and block out for a few minutes, and I'm in the costume, and now just a pin spot. She's taken the little thing off her head, a pin spot on the proscenium there, and she sings, I think, what was the name of it? I can't think now. Got a brand new suit. That was the name of it. And it was a showstopper thing. We had to take 3 and 4 encores. But would you believe this woman, who was a big star, had to be a maid to be on the stage with me? And I look at the TV today, and, I see Sammy Davis coming on and hugging and kissing, and everybody's hugging and kissing, and I think it's so wonderful, and it's the way it should have been from the beginning. But I think of all those wonderful people that I think I've worked with every big band that ever was. I was at Carnegie Hall with Paul Whiteman's orchestra and Maurice Chevalier's first appearance in America. The two of us and Paul Whiteman's orchestra.
What did you do?
Danced. What else? Yeah, in tails. Well, we did. Would you believe that I did a number? Now, did you ever hear of anyone tapping to Claire de Lune? I did a number to Claire de Lune. And that And I'm trying to think of names that I can pull out that I've worked with that was so wonderful. A very interesting thing happened when we were doing Melody of 40. For me, one of the highlights of my entire life. I was doing the ballet scene, and Fred wasn't working that day. And we, Albertina Rash and all the Albertina Rash girls were there, and we were in our costumes, our little tutus, and the playback, the music, all recorded, and no makeup on, but we were lining up for camera. The camera was there. We were lining up, making the marks on the floor for the next day's shooting. This is Melody 40, Broadway Melody of 40, the Pillow and Perrette number. And we were lining up, because if you line up with the camera and make the marks on the floor and all, then the next day they can go faster and they save money when they're filming the thing. So we were lining up, we'd done the number, we were rehearsing back and forth with the camera, and all of a sudden the phone rang and they called me to the phone, and Mr. Mayer was on the phone, and he said, "Eleanor, I have a very important visitor that I'm bringing down to the set. He will remain 15 minutes. You will go through the entire number from the beginning. He has taken an entire tour of the lot." And when he said the name, I almost fell over. Arturo Toscanini. Well, I had at that time every record. You remember, we didn't have TV in those days, and I feel like I've come over on the covered wagon, you know? Records was the big thing, you know, so, or radio. And I had every record of Mr. Toscanini up to that time, and also Heifetz. That was another love of, I never met the man to this day, but I loved Heifetz. And so I thought, oh, how marvelous that we're doing a ballet number. At least it's classical, you know, because I felt this man would just, you know, just abhor anything with the rhythm in it, tap dancing. So down he came with his wife, and Mr. Mayer and the entourage. They had all the publicity department. I never saw a group of people. The prop man was going around with a little canvas chair, setting them all up, you know. We had this white compo board that we were on, and of course my heart was beating. You know, here was this maestro, and we introduced, and we went into our number, and Madame Brash was over there. You know, she used to carry a little whip. She didn't use it, but she'd wear boots and slap it all against the boots like that. Ooh. And we went on, you know, and I curtsy in the middle of the floor and looked up, and he's applauding, and his wife beckons me over. And it seems that when he gets excited, he speaks half English and half Italian, see? And she said to me, "Oh, that was lovely, but Maestro is so disappointed." And I knew it wasn't the greatest ballet number in the world, you know. I said, why? And then he said something to her Italian, and he looks at me, he says, "I want to hear the dance with the noise." I said, "Tap dancing?" He said, "See, yes." And I said, I looked at Mr. Mayer, you know, and he said, go. Well, I had to send up and get my rehearsal clothes. I had to get out of this outfit. They had to push back the boards, you know, the compo boards, to get down to the wooden floor. They had to call over quickly to the music department for my piano player, hoping he'd be there, because we were working to a playback, you know. There was no need for Walter to be there, but he was there. And they rolled in a piano. Well, all this went on. And I want to tell you that I never danced along, but I danced, and he applauded more, and I danced. I did every number I knew. I ad-libbed, I was jamming, I was noodling. I mean, and you know, and then he comes over to me and he grabs my face and he kisses me here and here, but this time the tears are streaming down my face. I'm so elated. The Albertina Rash girls sitting in a circle are all full of tears. We were all a basket case, you know, from this excitement. And he said to Mr. Mayer, "I go now. I see nothing else. I go up the lot. I see nothing else." But the most beautiful thing in the world, about a week or 10 days later, I got this letter. Of course, it's framed, and I shall put it with me in my coffin, I believe. It says, "Dear Miss Powell, thank you for a beautiful afternoon on your set, and I want you to know that the 3 things that I will carry with me in my memory when I pass on to the world beyond will be number 1, the sunset, number 2, the Grand Canyon, number 3, your dancing, Oscar Neely. So, I'll never get Billy like that. But, you know, coming from someone that you adored, you know, oh, wow, you know. So people say, are you lonely? How can I be lonely? All these memories come wafting in. It's been such an exciting and wonderful, you know, I taught Sunday school for 12 years. I have 5 Emmy Awards for a religious program. Nothing for dancing. So I said to my mother, I'm in the wrong business. The children used to call me the dancing preacher. Somebody said to me once, who is your favorite dancing partner? I said, you really want me to answer you that truthfully? They said, yes. And I said, God, that's my best partner. And it's true. I don't think anyone, you know, could go along being so grateful and loving people the way I do if you didn't have a belief in a higher power, if there wasn't someone right there with you all the time. That's the way I feel.
Well,
and I love you for coming.
extraordinary evening. I just
Thank
can't tell you
you.
how much value
Too
it
bad I
is
don't
for all
talk.
of us. Well,
Yes, sir.
Yeah, question.
Writing some of these wonderful things.
No. Well, I tell you why. Because my life, it hasn't today. It hasn't got a lot of sex in it. It hasn't a lot of drugs in it. And I'm not an alcoholic, and I don't think you know, it would sell very good. It's too clean. It's just loving people and loving to perform. All the books today, you know, they want sordid things. It seems to me.
Well, I think we need a little of what we just heard here this evening. Is there another question? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Yes, dear.
Do you still dance, or do you still ballet?
Well, you know, I do work out. I do work out, and I have not danced in front of the public since 1964. I did an act from 61 to 64, and then I did a Bell Telephone Hour during that time. I did 2 Perry Como shows. But February 1st, this past February 1st, I went out to the Motion Picture Home, and they had a big show out there. It's the second time I've been out there. And for the first time since 1964, I danced.
Oh, great.
I can't spin the way I used to, but as far as the groundwork, that's still there because I work out with that.
You can
And
still
I,
do the
oh
dance with
yeah,
the
I
noise, huh?
still do that tap stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think the turns could be, and after all, you know, I think I've turned enough in my life. But I have this little grandson who's full of rhythm, and I think he's going to dance.
Oh.
He's studying piano already, and he's 4. When he's 6, he just loves it. I can tell. I can just tell. But it's too soon. You know, 6 years old is time enough to see. And if he doesn't like it, fine, you know. He thinks his grandma's just fantastic, you see. He saw me for the first time on the screen in the drum dance. And I said, would you like to see Grandma on the TV? And you know how sharp they are today. You know, they look at TV. He said, on the TV? You know, what would I do on the TV? I said, yeah, I'm on something that, and I know on That's Entertainment, I come on 11 minutes after it starts. It was 8:30, and his bedtime is 9, and I do a lot of babysitting, you know. So on the long shot, he didn't recognize me, naturally, because he only seen me like this. But the minute I took the mask away on the drum dance and smiled, Grandma! That's it. He goes up and he kisses the screen. Then he sits down and he looks at the whole thing. And when I turn at the end, put my hands up, I looked at him, I said, that's it, that's all. And he said, you know, Grandma, you dance real good. I said, well, thank you.
Yeah, you sure do dance real good.
No, but it's sweet, you know.
Well, we would like, I don't have the framed thing here, but we would like to have the honor of having you join our Headliners Hall of Fame.
love it.
And you'll get the document, all properly signed by the dean of
I'd
the
love it,
university and us, and I can't
want to
imagine
thank
anybody
you.
that would...
I want to thank you so much for having me.
Oh,
It's been such a pleasure, and I want to thank all of you for coming. You've been just lovely, and I deeply appreciate it. Thank you.